Have you ever wondered why some people thrive while others merely survive? I'm not talking about luck or circumstance. I'm talking about something far more profound, a philosophy of life that the Jewish people have practiced for millennia. Today, I'm going to reveal secrets that will not only change how you view your finances, but transform your entire existence. You sit there, probably in the same place you were last year, and the year before that. Your bank account tells a story of mediocrity, doesn't it? Don't look away. Face this truth. While you're struggling to make ends meet, others are building generational wealth. The difference isn't what you think. It's not about having a better job, being born into the right family, or getting lucky with investments. Let me tell you something that might shock you. Your poverty. Yes, I'm calling it poverty, because living paycheck to paycheck is poverty, regardless of your income, is not a financial problem. It's a spiritual one. The Jewish people have understood this for over 5,000 years. When God led us out of Egypt, He didn't just free our bodies. He freed our minds from the slavery mentality that keeps so many people chained to mediocrity today. You see, in the Torah, the first thing God created wasn't matter, it was light. Let there be light, He said. This light wasn't physical, it was understanding. And that's what you lack. Not money, but understanding. You're still in darkness, fumbling around with get-rich-quick schemes and consumer debt, wondering why wealth seems to evade you. I've spent decades studying our ancient wisdom and applying it in the modern world. I've built businesses, invested in real estate, and created generational wealth. But more importantly, I've helped thousands of people break free from their Egypt, their personal slavery to poor financial habits and limiting beliefs. The Talmud teaches us that when a person is brought before the heavenly court, the first question asked is not, "Did you pray enough?" or even, "Did you study Torah?" No, the first question is, "Did you conduct your business affairs with integrity?" Why? Because how you handle money reflects your understanding of God's world and your role in it. You might be thinking, "But Caleb, I'm not Jewish. How can this wisdom apply to me?" Truth is universal. When God gave the Torah to Moses, it wasn't just for the Jewish people. It was a blueprint for prosperity that anyone can follow. The principles I'm about to share with you have created more millionaires and sustained more generational wealth than any modern financial strategy. Look at your life right now. You're probably doing what society told you to do. Go to school, get a job, save a little, spend a lot. How's that working out? Your retirement account is probably a joke. Your debt is probably crushing you. And despite all your hard work, you're probably just one emergency away from financial disaster. But it doesn't have to be this way. The same wisdom that helped our people survive and thrive through centuries of persecution, exile, and starting over from nothing, time and time again, can help you break free from your financial bondage. In the coming minutes, I'm going to share with you 3 fundamental principles from Jewish financial wisdom. These aren't complex investment strategies or get-rich-quick schemes. They're timeless truths that have been tested and proven through millennia. They worked in ancient Jerusalem, they worked in medieval Europe, and they work today in New York, Tel Aviv, and everywhere else where people have the wisdom to apply them. You might be uncomfortable with what I'm about to share. Good. Comfort is the enemy of growth. The Torah tells us that before receiving the 10 Commandments, the people trembled at Mount Sinai. Why include this detail? Because transformation, real, lasting transformation, should shake you to your core. Some of you will reject this wisdom. You'll go back to your comfortable mediocrity, back to blaming the economy, the government, or your circumstances. But some of you, the ones ready for real change, will recognize this moment for what it is: your own personal exodus, your opportunity to break free from financial slavery. Are you ready to learn why you've been stuck in your own Egypt? Are you prepared to face some uncomfortable truths about your relationship with money? Most importantly, are you willing to change not just your financial habits, but your entire perspective on wealth and purpose? Remember, in Hebrew, the word for crisis, mashber, also means birth stool. What looks like a crisis in your financial life might just be the birth pangs of your prosperity, but only if you're willing to learn and change. Let me know if this opening resonates with you, and I'll continue with even more profound insights that will shake your financial world to its core. Let's diagnose why you're still struggling financially. This might hurt, but sometimes The truth needs to sting before it can heal. Do you really think you can build wealth with habits that keep you shackled to mediocrity? Your problem isn't the economy. It isn't inflation. It isn't even your income. Your problem is you. Let me show you why. First, let's talk about your complete lack of planning. When was the last time you sat down and created a real financial strategy? Not just a basic budget, but a true wealth-building plan? You probably can't remember because you've never done it. The Talmud teaches us who is wise, one who sees the future consequences of their actions. But you live like there's no tomorrow, spending first and worrying later. You know what I see when I look at your financial habits? I see someone who treats their paycheck like winning a lottery. Here today, gone tomorrow. The Torah commands us to take 1/10 of our earnings first before any spending. This isn't just about charity, it's about discipline. But you spend everything that comes in, and then wonder why there's nothing left to save or invest. Let's talk about your spending habits. That new phone you bought, those designer clothes, the fancy car you can barely afford. The Talmud says, who is rich? One who is happy with what they have. But you're trying to look rich instead of building real wealth. You're choosing temporary satisfaction over lasting prosperity. Here's a painful truth. Every time you swipe that credit card for something you don't need, you're voting for your own poverty. The interest you're paying? That's the tax on your lack of discipline. In Jewish wisdom, we have a concept called ribbit, the prohibition of charging interest. Why? Because debt enslaves. And you're volunteering for slavery every time you make a minimum payment on your credit card. You're probably thinking, but Caleb, I need these things to maintain my image. Really? Let me tell you about my grandfather. He survived the Holocaust with nothing but the clothes on his back. When he came to America, he wore the same 2 suits for years while building his business. He understood something you don't. True wealth isn't about what you wear, it's about what you own. Your ignorance about money isn't cute anymore, it's destructive. You don't understand the basic principles of wealth building, yet you have the audacity to complain about being broke. The Mishnah teaches, the ignorant person cannot be pious. In financial terms, your ignorance is keeping you poor. Let me show you what your financial illiteracy is really costing you. That $5 daily coffee? If you had invested that money in stable assets over the past 10 years, following the principle of consistent, disciplined investing that our sages teach, you'd have over $23,000 today. But instead, you have empty coffee cups. You're afraid of investing because you don't understand it. Instead of educating yourself, you keep your money in a savings account, watching inflation eat away at its value. The Torah teaches us to be stewards of what God gives us. How are you being a good steward by letting your resources diminish? And let's talk about your emergency fund, or rather the lack of it. The Torah tells the story of Joseph, who saved during the 7 years of plenty to prepare for the 7 years of famine. But you can't even save for next month. You're one car repair away from financial disaster, and you know it. You chase quick returns instead of building lasting wealth. The gambling mentality that makes you buy lottery tickets or jump into get-rich-quick schemes. That's poverty thinking. Jewish wisdom teaches us to plant trees for future generations. When's the last time you thought about your financial legacy? Here's what makes this even more tragic. You know better. Deep down, you know these habits are destroying your financial future, but you continue anyway. Why? Because change is uncomfortable. Because discipline is hard. Because thinking long-term requires sacrifice. The Talmud says, the way a person wishes to go, they are led. You're choosing this path of financial mediocrity. Every day, with every decision, you're choosing to stay poor. Your bank account isn't empty because of bad luck. It's empty because of bad choices. But here's the thing. Just as you've chosen this path, you can choose a different one. Our sages teach that true repentance begins with acknowledging our mistakes. You've just heard yours laid bare. The question is, are you ready to change? In the next few minutes, I'm going to show you the principles that have guided Jewish financial wisdom for millennia. These aren't just theories. They're battle-tested strategies that have helped our people prosper through persecution, exile, and countless fresh starts. Are you ready to learn the truth about building real wealth? Or will you continue to lie to yourself and pretend that your financial struggles are someone else's fault? Now let me share with you the central principle that has guided Jewish wealth creation for thousands of years. This isn't just another financial tip. It's a complete paradigm shift that will transform how you view money, wealth, and your own potential. In Jewish wisdom, we have two fundamental concepts that work together: bitachon and hishtadlut. Bitachon is complete trust in God, while hishtadlut is human effort. The magic happens when these two forces align, but you've been getting this completely wrong. Let me tell you a story from the Talmud. A rabbi once asked his student why he wasn't in the study house that morning. The student replied, "I was busy in the marketplace making a living." The rabbi then asked, "Did all the fish in the sea die that you could only find them in one specific spot?" The point wasn't to shame the student. It was to teach him that while we must work, hishtadlut, our success isn't limited to one path, bitachon. You're probably thinking this is just some ancient philosophy. Wrong. This principle is more relevant today than ever. When you truly understand it, you'll never look at money the same way again. Here's how this applies to your life right now. You either fall into one of two traps. You're either all bitachon with no hishtadlut, or all hishtadlut with no bitachon. Let me explain why both are failing you. If you're all bitachon, you're probably the type who says, "God will provide," while sitting on your couch, watching Netflix. You pray for wealth, but never take concrete actions to create it. The Torah explicitly condemns this attitude. When the Israelites were trapped at the Red Sea, Moses prayed, and God responded, "Why do you cry out to me? Tell the Israelites to move forward." Prayer without action is not faith, it's laziness. Or maybe you're all hishtadlut, constantly hustling, working 80-hour weeks, stressed out of your mind, trying to control everything. You think if you just work hard enough, you'll finally make it. How's that working out for you? The Talmud teaches that while we must work, our success ultimately comes from God. Your anxiety and stress come from forgetting this truth. The Jewish way teaches balance. We work as if everything depends on us, but trust as if everything depends on God. This isn't just philosophy. It's practical wisdom that creates real wealth. Let me show you how. First principle, the rule of thirds. The Talmud advises dividing your assets into three parts: 1/3 in business, 1/3 in land, and 1/3 in cash. In modern terms, this means 1/3 in growth investments, stocks, business ventures, anything that can multiply your wealth. 1/3 in stable assets, real estate, bonds, things that preserve wealth. 1/3 in liquid assets, cash, emergency fund, ready for opportunities. But here's where you're failing. You're probably not even saving 10%, let alone having enough to divide into thirds. You're trapped in the poverty mindset of living paycheck to paycheck. Second principle, diversification. The Talmud says, a person should always divide their money into three parts. This isn't just about different asset classes. It's about multiple streams of income. How many do you have? One paycheck? That's not security. That's slavery. Here's a modern application. Start a side business. Invest in real estate. Build passive income streams. The wealthy Jews throughout history never relied on just one source of income. They understood that true wealth comes from multiple sources. Third principle, long-term thinking. When Rabbi Yochanan ben Zakkai fled Jerusalem during its destruction, he didn't ask to save the city or the temple. He asked to preserve the academy at Yavneh, because he knew that education and wisdom would rebuild our nation. That's long-term thinking. But you're still thinking about this month's bills. You're still making decisions based on immediate gratification rather than long-term wealth building. Let me be brutally honest with you. If you don't apply these principles, you'll be in exactly the same place next year and the year after that. How much longer will you choose to live in financial mediocrity? How many more years will you waste before you decide to take control of your financial future? The choice is yours. You can continue living like a slave to your paycheck, or you can start building real wealth the way our ancestors did. You can keep making excuses, or you can start making changes. Remember, the Hebrew word for wealth, osher, shares the same root as the word for happiness, ashrei. True wealth isn't just about money. It's about freedom, security, and the ability to fulfill your purpose in this world. Are you ready to learn the practical steps to implement these principles in your life? Or will you continue to ignore the wisdom that has created more millionaires than any modern financial strategy? Now let me give you the exact steps you need to take to implement this ancient wisdom. Not tomorrow, not next week, today. Because if you're not willing to start right now, you might as well stop watching. Step 1. Face your financial reality. The Talmud teaches, make your accounting honest, and your reward will be honest. I want you to do something uncomfortable right now. Take out every financial statement you have. Bank accounts, credit cards, loans, everything. Don't just glance at them. Study them like your life depends on it. Because financially, it does. Create a spreadsheet or get a financial app. I don't care which. But start tracking every single dollar. The Jewish concept of cheshbon means both accounting and soul-searching. When you track your money, you're not just recording numbers. You're facing the truth about your choices. You're probably thinking, I'll do this later. No, that's exactly why you're poor. The wealthy don't postpone financial clarity. They embrace it. Right now, set up automatic tracking for all your expenses. If you can't face your numbers, you can't fix them. Step 2. Implement the sacred tenth. Before you spend a single dollar from your next paycheck, remove at least 10%. This isn't just about savings, it's about discipline. In the Torah, the concept of ma'aser, tithing, teaches us to separate the sacred portion first. Make this automatic. Set up a direct deposit to a separate account that you won't touch. But Caleb, I can't afford to save 10%. Really? Let me show you why that's a lie. Pull up your bank statement. Look at how much you spent on restaurants last month, on streaming services, on impulse purchases. You can afford it. You're just choosing not to. Step 3. Build your financial ark. Noah didn't wait for the rain to start before building the ark. Yet you're waiting for an emergency before building your emergency fund. Start building your financial ark now. The minimum is 6 months of expenses. Yes, minimum. Break it down into weekly goals. If you need $20,000 in your emergency fund, that's $400 a week for a year. Too much? Then cut your expenses, sell things, get a side hustle. The Talmud says, poverty follows the poor. Stop acting poor by having no safety net. Step 4. Create multiple income streams. The wealthy Jews throughout history never relied on one source of income. Neither should you. Start a side business. Learn a marketable skill. Invest in dividend-paying stocks. The goal is to have money working for you, even while you sleep. But I don't have capital to invest. Stop. The Talmud tells us about Rabbi Akiva, who started learning at 40 with nothing. He became both wealthy and wise. Start with what you have. Begin with $100 if that's all you've got. The principle is more important than the amount. Step 5. Implement the power of partnerships. The Jewish concept of shutafut, partnership, teaches us that we grow stronger together. Find someone successful and make yourself valuable to them. Offer to learn from them. Work for them for free if you have to. The knowledge you'll gain is worth more than any salary. Right now, identify 3 people who are where you want to be financially. Reach out to them this week. Don't ask for money. Ask for guidance. Offer value first. Remember, Moses had Yitro as a mentor. Even he didn't try to go it alone. Step 6. The Daily Money Review. Every night before bed, review your day's financial decisions. The Jewish practice of cheshbon hanefesh, soul accounting, isn't just for Yom Kippur. Make it daily. Did each expenditure bring you closer to your goals or further away? Was each earning opportunity maximized? Set up a daily alarm right now. When it goes off, spend 10 minutes reviewing your financial choices. This isn't a suggestion, it's a command. If you're not willing to spend 10 minutes daily on your finances, you're choosing to stay poor. Step 7. The Wealth Declaration. In Jewish tradition, we have the concept of Kabbalat Ol, accepting the yoke of responsibility. Write down your financial goals and read them aloud twice daily, just as we recite the Shema. Make it specific. I will have X hours in investments by date. I will create X additional income streams by date. Do this right now. Stop the video. Write your declaration. I'll wait. Have you done it? If not, you're already failing yourself. The final step, and this is crucial, is to act immediately. The Talmud teaches that wisdom without action is like a tree without fruit. Everything I've just taught you is worthless if you don't implement it right now. Here's your immediate action plan. Next 10 minutes, set up your expense tracking system. Next hour, create your financial spreadsheet. Next 24 hours, set up automatic transfers for your sacred 10th. Next 48 hours, reach out to potential mentors. Next week, have your first additional income stream planned out. But Caleb, this seems overwhelming. Of course it is. Building wealth should be overwhelming. If it were easy, everyone would be rich. The question is, are you willing to be overwhelmed temporarily to create permanent change? You now have a precise blueprint for building wealth, but knowledge without action is worthless. Will you continue to watch videos and read books about wealth while remaining poor? Or will you finally take action? Are you ready to hear about the specific examples of people who have applied these principles and transformed their lives? Or are you still making excuses about why you can't start right now? Let me share with you some powerful stories of transformation. Not just ancient tales, but living proof that these principles work in any era. These aren't just success stories, they're blueprints for what you could achieve if you stopped making excuses and started taking action. First, let me tell you about David Solomon, not related to me. In 1945, he arrived in New York with nothing but a torn coat and $7 in his pocket. He had survived the Holocaust, lost his entire family, and was completely alone. Most people would have given up. Most people would have accepted victim status. But David understood our ancient principles. You know what his first investment was? Not stocks, not real estate. He invested in a pushcart to sell fruits and vegetables. Why? Because the Talmud teaches that a person should always keep their money in 3 parts, and one must be in business. That pushcart was his first business asset. While others would have looked for a safe job, David understood that true wealth comes from ownership. Within 5 years, that pushcart became a small store. Within 10 years, he owned a chain of grocery stores. By 1970, he had diversified into real estate and manufacturing, following the Talmudic principle of diversification. Today, his grandchildren manage a billion-dollar empire, but it all started with a pushcart and the right principles. Now let me tell you a modern story. Sarah Cohen, one of my students from 3 years ago. When she came to me, she was drowning in $87,000 of credit card debt. Master's degree, good job, but financially ignorant. Sound familiar? She was you, educated but poor, working hard but going nowhere. The first thing we did was implement the principle of Cheshbon, honest accounting. She tracked every dollar for 30 days. The results shocked her. She was spending $2,300 annually just on coffee. Another $4,800 on subscriptions she barely used. But here's what transformed her life. We didn't just cut expenses. We redirected them into wealth building. Following the rule of thirds, she started dividing her savings. 1/3 into a high-yield emergency fund, 1/3 into index funds, and 1/3 into starting a social media consulting business. Today, just 3 years later, she's debt-free, has 6 figures invested, and her side business generates more than her day job. But let me tell you about my own grandfather, Moshe Solomon. During the Great Depression, when everyone was selling, he was buying. Why? Because he understood the principle of counter-cyclical investing that's taught in the Torah. When Joseph interpreted Pharaoh's dream, he didn't just predict 7 years of plenty followed by 7 years of famine. He created a wealth-building strategy. My grandfather applied this wisdom. He bought properties when others were fearful. He started businesses when others were closing them. By the time the economy recovered, he had built an empire. But here's what most people miss. It wasn't just about timing. It was about having the courage to follow timeless principles when everyone else was succumbing to fear. Let me give you a more recent example. Daniel Friedman, a 24-year-old software engineer who came to me last year. Good salary, but living paycheck to paycheck in Silicon Valley. We applied the principle of Maaser, the sacred 10th, but with a modern twist. Instead of just saving 10%, he created what I call a prosperity portfolio. Every month, he automatically invested 10% in tech stocks he understood, his field of expertise, 10% in real estate investment trusts, following the Talmudic principle of land ownership, and 10% in starting his own app development business. In just 1 year, his net worth has grown by 6 figures. But more importantly, he's built lasting wealth-generating habits. Or consider Rachel Levy's story. Single mother, middle school teacher, barely making ends meet. She thought these principles couldn't work for someone with her income. Wrong. We started with the principle of shoot-a-foot, strategic partnerships. She partnered with another teacher to create educational materials they could sell online. Small start, just $50 investment each. Today, their educational platform generates $40,000 monthly in passive income. But here's the key. She didn't just create a business, she built it on Jewish principles of providing real value and thinking long-term. Every product they create is designed to serve their customers for years, not just make a quick sale. These aren't isolated success stories. I could tell you about Jacob, who turned $1,000 into $100,000 in 2 years by following these principles. Or about Rebecca, who built a real estate empire starting with a single duplex. Or about countless others who have applied these timeless truths to create modern wealth. But here's what matters. Every single one of these people started exactly where you are now. They all had doubts. They all had fears. They all had excuses. The only difference between them and you is that they decided to act despite those fears. You've heard these stories. You've seen the proof that these principles work. The question isn't whether they work. The question is whether you'll work them. Will you be the next success story I tell in my seminars? Or will you remain another example of someone who knew the truth but failed to act on it? Are you ready to learn the final, most crucial step in this transformation? The step that will determine whether you become a success story or remain a cautionary tale. Let me leave you with a final truth that will either set you free or keep you chained to mediocrity, depending on what you choose to do with it. Everything I've shared with you today, every principle, every strategy, every example, means nothing if you're not ready to transform your relationship with wealth. You're standing at a crossroads right now. This isn't just about money, it's about who you choose to be. The Torah teaches us that when the Israelites left Egypt, many wanted to go back. Think about that. They chose familiar slavery over uncomfortable freedom. Are you making the same choice with your finances? Let this sink in. Your current financial situation is not your destiny. It's your choice. Every day you wake up and either reinforce your poverty or build your wealth. Every purchase, every investment decision, every moment of procrastination is a vote for the future you're creating. The wisdom I've shared with you today has created more wealth than any modern financial strategy. It survived the destruction of 2 temples. It thrived during the Spanish Inquisition. It rebuilt fortunes after the Holocaust. And yet, you're probably thinking, this sounds good, but stop. That but is the voice of your financial slavery. That's your Egypt talking. The same voice that keeps you working at a job you hate, spending money you don't have, living a life far below your potential. Here's what's going to happen next. Most of you will close this video and go back to your usual habits. You'll tell yourself you'll start tomorrow. You'll make excuses about why this won't work for you. You'll convince yourself that your situation is different. And in doing so, you'll choose to stay exactly where you are. But some of you, maybe you, will recognize this moment for what it is. Your exodus, your chance to break free, your opportunity to transform not just your finances, but your entire legacy. The choice is yours, but understand this. There is no neutral ground. Every day you don't build wealth, you're actively choosing poverty. Every day you don't implement these principles, you're voting for mediocrity. Every day you postpone taking action, you're saying yes to financial bondage. Think about your children, your grandchildren. The Talmud teaches us that our actions echo through generations. What legacy are you building? Will your descendants praise your wisdom or curse your short-sightedness? Here's your moment of truth. Will you be like those who stood at Mount Sinai and said, "We will do and we will hear," committing to action before understanding everything? Or will you be like those who stayed in Egypt, too afraid to embrace freedom? I want you to do 3 things right now. Not tomorrow, not later, but right now. First, subscribe to this channel. Why? Because transformation isn't a moment. It's a journey. I'll be sharing more ancient wisdom that you can apply to create modern wealth. Don't miss a single lesson that could transform your financial future. Second, share this video. Why? Because the Talmud teaches that when we help others prosper, we ourselves prosper. Share this wisdom with someone who needs to hear it. Be the person who helps another break free from financial slavery. Third, comment below with your biggest takeaway and your first action step. Make a public commitment to your transformation. Let this community support your journey from poverty thinking to wealth building. Remember, in Hebrew, the word for crisis, mashba, shares the same root as the word for breakthrough. Your financial crisis can become your breakthrough moment, but only if you choose it. The same wisdom that helped our people survive and thrive for thousands of years is available to you right now. The same principles that built generational wealth throughout history can work in your life today. The same transformation that others have experienced is possible for you. But you must choose. You must act. You must begin. The next move is yours. Will you remain in your financial Egypt, comfortable in your slavery? Or will you begin your exodus to freedom and prosperity? The time for excuses is over. The time for transformation is now. Shalom, and may the Almighty bless you with the courage to act on what you've learned today.